Hello Logic users, Mike here. In this video you will get a complete guide on the amazing drummer track in Logic Pro X. You will learn all the main features, get practical live examples, as well as my best power tips. So let's master the drummer in Logic Pro X right now. Add a drummer. You start by simply adding a drummer track to your project, either from the menu, Track, New Drummer Track, or by using the key command Option plus Command plus U. Make sure to drag it to the proper place in your sequencer, for example at the top of your drum group, or perhaps even the top of your sequencer altogether. Choose your style. When you have the drummer track selected, you simply open up the library view, where you will find the genre and style browser for the drummer. The left column is where you choose the main genre, and to the right of it you have different drummers with unique performance styles that you can try out as a starting point for your project. Whenever you choose a new drummer, Logic will automatically assign the corresponding drum kit. You can see the current selected drum kit in the instrument library below the drummer assignments. Power tip. You can actually change drum kit manually from the instrument library so that a specific drummer and genre of your choice is performed on a drum kit that you can also choose. It can be a drum kit plugin or a sample library. As long as it is mapped to the standard general MIDI drum mapping system, it should work fine, and most plugins actually are. Meaning the kick drum is the same key in every drum plugin, the snare is also the same key, and so on. Create drummer regions. When you create a new drummer track, Logic will create the first drummer region automatically. For any drummer region, you can resize it, split it up into several parts, move it in the sequencer, and so on. And of course, you can create new drummer regions simply by hovering your mouse at the right side of the track header or just to the right of another drummer region. You can also add a drummer region by right-clicking or Control left-clicking and choose Create Drummer Region from the menu. In this same menu, you can also choose Populate with Drummer Regions, which will create drummer regions for the entire project. Power tip. If you have added arrangement sections in the global tracks area, you can use Populate with Drummer Regions, and this will add drummer regions that correspond not only to the length of those arrangement sections, but also to the category of each section. For example, the intro section will get an intro type drum performance. The verse will have a slightly higher energy, and so on. Control the energy. First, you bring up the drummer performance view by double-clicking a drummer region, or by selecting one and clicking E for editors. Every region will have an independent performance based on the AI of this drummer performance view, and the main control over the performance is the XY controller for strength and complexity of the drum beat. The more you move this dot up, the louder the drummer will make the performance in that region, and the more you move it to the right, the more complex the beat will become. Every time you move this dot, the AI will update the drummer region. And this is the main way to shape the drummer's performance, so make sure to add variation to each region and add more regions for even more detailed control over the drummer. Shape the style per region. You can even use independent beat presets for the drummer on each region inside the drummer track. You will find these presets just to the side of the XY pad, and the actual preset names will be different depending on the genre and drummer you have chosen. Create more regions. The drummer AI works per region, so by creating more regions, you can add more variation into your drummer track. I personally use 4-bar regions as my standard length instead of 8 bars, which is the default setting. I do this because drummers often add a little fill or variation at the turn of every 4 bars, and also because of the added control I get with more regions. Control the transitions. If you want even more control over the drummer track in a transition from one section to another in your track, you can simply cut a small extra region just before the transition point. For example, 1 bar or even half a bar if you want to be really precise. Then you can dial down the fills knob on the region just before and increase it on the short transition drummer region. Power tip. Since transitions are so incredibly important in music, you might even want to convert the short transition region on the drummer track to customize the beat exactly as you want it. Change the instrumentation. You also have independent control over the parts of the drum kit used per region. You have a clear visual representation of the drum parts used from the specific drum kit. Simply select or deselect any part of the drum kit that you want to have in the specific drummer region's performance. Take advantage of this for adding even more variation between your regions. Drum part variations. You can apply variations to the main parts of the drummer's performance with the sliders beside the drum kit. These sliders will change depending on the drummer's style, but mainly they are percussion, hi-hats and shakers, and the main beat, meaning kick, snare, clap, and so on. Add some fills. You can use the fills knob and dial in the strength and complexity of all the fills the drummer adds to a selected region. The main fill will always be focused to the end of a region, but the drummer can also add, for example, a cymbal crash in the start of a region and some small extra details in the middle depending on the setting of this fills knob. Add some swing. Swing is when the players don't follow the straight beat but rather play in a swing fashion. Full swing will be a triplet groove, but you can dial in how much the drummer will swing the beat with this dial. You can also choose if the swing will be based on 8th triplets or 16th triplets feel. Both the fills knob and the swing knob can also be locked, so that you can try out different beat presets without these dials changing. Polish the finish. You can shape and polish the performance with the Details button, which has different features depending on the drummer's style. For the rock drummers, you can control the feel, pull versus push, ghost notes, less versus more, and hi-hat preference, closed versus open. And for the electronic kits, you can control the complexity range per drum part, as well as the humanized level and phrase variation. And again, what is so powerful is that you can control all of these per region. Keep your settings. You can lock your settings so that you can change the drummer while still maintaining the performance you already created and shaped. You can even lock the drum kit so that it will remain even when changing to a completely different style of drummer. For example, having a rock drum kit played by a hip-hop or EDM drummer. You will find both of these settings if you click the cog wheel beside the beat preset list. Add some refreshments. The drummer in Logic is truly remarkable, because even with the same settings on all features, you can get a slightly different performance due to some randomizations in the algorithm. And you can always reapply this slight AI randomization by going into the cogwheel and choosing Refresh Region. Every time you do this, you will get a tiny variation to the performance. Convert to MIDI. Right-click or Control left-click on any drummer region and you will get a menu. Find Convert and then choose Convert to MIDI region. Now you can go in and adjust each drum hit individually. Add or delete notes, control the timing, velocity, move notes, and so on. Power tip. If you want to use the drummer as a workflow booster for creating percussive MIDI parts in the rest of your music composition, you can simply Option drag a drummer region to another MIDI track, which will automatically convert it to a MIDI performance as well. Follow the drummer. If you want to use another drum plugin but still get the performance of the drummer track, you can simply create an alias of the drummer region. I personally call this the mimic method, because it is essentially mimicking the region you create the alias from. For example, create a new track below the drummer and assign another drum plugin and drum kit. Then Shift plus Option drag a drummer region to the new track below. Then you can even mute the drummer track completely, and the new drum plugin that you dragged the alias region to will still play the performance based on the drummer region. In this live example, I have this short composition I created with a drummer on top, a drive track playing the rhythm, harmony track playing the chords, and a melody track on the bottom here. So let's first listen to it, and then we will dive into the actual drummer track, and I will show you all the customizations I made to create this drumming performance. Alright, let's listen now. So let's dive into the actual regions here on the drummer. If I open up the library, you can see I'm using the alternative genre here and Gavin playing indie rock as the drumming style. So it also uses the drum kit Brooklyn, which is an acoustic drum kit. Now let's open up the drummer editor by clicking E after you selected a region. And here you can see the beat presets for every style, which is custom because I customize these beats, and also the XY pad and all the settings here. So let's go through them one by one for the regions here. So for the intro, I want something that feels like a fill or transition. So I actually increased this fills knob here, and let's listen to this in solo, by the way. So right now it sounds like this. It really sounds like a great fill and transition into the verse section here. So what I did here was that I created a short 1-bar region, and then I use Shift-N to name the regions. I like to name them properly to know what exactly the specific drumming performance is for. So then I used the XY pad, which is the most important setting in the drummer. I want something complex, which means lots of drum hits, but not that loud because it is a fill and transition region, not a chorus, for example. Then I chose the kick drum, the snare, and the hi-hat here to be included in this beat. And these were the settings or the variations I wanted. But the most important knob is the fills knob. So I dialed this up to, let's say 60-70% or so. So you can experiment with different variations on the fills knob here, and also on the complexity and simple axis and soft and loud. Let's say you have something simple and soft and no fill, this will be a straight beat. Not really that good, as you can hear. Alright, so let's move this back to the complex side and the fills knob up, and we have, as you can hear, much better as a transition and fill. If you're not really truly happy about the transition and you don't want to change all these settings, you can always get slight variations of these settings by clicking the cogwheel here and clicking refresh region, and look what happens. The drummer AI makes a slight different variation every time you use this, and you can try it out until you're happy. Right, so let's say that is good. Next we go to the verse, so select the section, and as you can see, when I click on different regions, they are independent of each other with all these settings. So for the verse drumming part, I want something slightly simple and in the middle of the soft and loud scale. I want the kick drum, snare and hi-hat here. In fact, let's change this to, let's say, number 3 for the variation of the hi-hats. I don't want any fills, and I want a slight swing fill, just a couple of percent there. So this sounds like this now. Right? And then we can go to this part, which is a transition into the, well, I call it the energy section, which is this. Which is basically a repetition, but a bit louder this time. Now for this, I went again to increase the fills knob. I changed it to include the cymbals here, and I added even more complexity and loudness compared to this one, the first fill or the intro. And these were the rest of the settings. I actually increased the swing slightly more and the fills knob, as you can see. And then into the energy section, where I used the loudest setting on the XY pad. I even added some claps because, well, claps are more energy in my opinion. And I have some fills in the end, no swing here. And then we go to the section here where the chords and drive and melody calms down. So I call this drummer region calm down, reduced to very simple, slightly soft, which you can see, less drum hits here. Some fills in the end there, and I went back to kick drum, snare and hi-hat. And then the end region here, which is very simple and soft. I use the cymbals and the snare, and you can hear the ride cymbals here with a bit of a fill knob there, which sounds like this in the end. Just listen to the drummer. Let's listen from here. And if we listen to it in context, you will hear the calm down effect together with the rest of the tracks. Like so. Now, what if you like the performance but not the actual drum kit sound? You can actually use a third-party plugin or any drum kit that is mapped to the general MIDI standard for drums, and you can then use an alias of this track to play the exact performance on the other drum plugin. So I have created a track here, which is Addictive Drums 2, one of my favorite drum plugins. And I use the Studio Pop kit. So you can simply drag it and put it below the drummer track. Then if you select all these regions and hold down Shift and Option, then left click, and you see the plus sign, and you drag it down like this. This is now an alias. You see these little tilted arrows here to this track, which means these will play exactly what these regions are playing. So you can now mute this track and you will get the sound of the Addictive Drums drum kit played by the drummer, like this. Compared to the sound of the original drum kit. So you can go into this drum kit and customize the settings, the individual drums and mixer settings, or choose another drum plugin if you wish. The point is that you get much more flexibility and control when you use a second drum track with the drum plugin and kit of your choice and all the custom sound shaping and settings here, and then use the alias, or as I call it, the mimic mode, to create aliases of these drummer regions you already created. And by the way, you can still go into these regions in the drummer settings and make changes, and those will update the settings of the aliased region below. In this live example, I will show you this short composition with a drive track, a harmony track and a melody track, and a drum track that is played on a third-party plugin called Addictive Drums 2, but it does not play the full drum performance, only the main beat, which is the kick drum and the snare hits in this case. The reason I often do this is because I want to be in complete control of the main beat to make sure the accents land on the proper beat corresponding to the rhythm of the rest of the composition. Then I use the drummer track for the high drive and high percussion parts. So first let's listen to what it sounds like now with only the main beat on this drum plugin. Alright, so I actually got a wrong note I see here. It should be here to line up to the chord change and change in drive here. But anyway, now let's go to the drummer track and let's create a new drummer region here. And let's create another one, in fact. So what do I want to accomplish here? Well, I want to get rid of the kick drum and the snare drum in the drummer because I don't need it because I already have it on this track. So let's start by well, in fact, let's first create the regions I want. I want to add another region here in the chord change, like so, and on the final bar, let's make kind of an outro. Now let's go to each region here. Remove the kick drum, remove the snare drum, and let's say I want to have a tambourine, or let's do a shaker and a hi-hat. Let's choose a hi-hat drive, make it slightly more complex. I don't want any fill in that region. And let's go to the next one, which is a fill kind of thing, not with the... I want to use... Well, let's use the toms for that one and the cymbals. No, you can't do that. All right, so let's use the tom and the... So let's use the toms and the shaker then. Add some swing, add some fills. Like so. So we have a fill here. Let's go into the next region. Remove the kick drum again and snare drum. Let's go with hi-hat. And what was it in the first region? Shaker. Let's do that again. Use another hi-hat and percussion variation. Then to the final part, let's only use the cymbals for this one. Really simple and soft. No fill at the end. Just as a starting point, I don't know how this will sound, but the point is that I want to use this external drum plugin for the main beat and the drummer track for the high percussion and drive. So let's listen to how it sounds right now. Alright, so that is a starting point at least, and then I go into each region and manipulate the settings to get exactly what I want. I immediately notice that the high drive is way too loud compared to the rest of the track, but you get the point from this demonstration at least. So try this out for yourself. Use the drummer for the high percussion and create another drum plugin for the main beat, which often is the kick drum and the snare drum. This way you will be in control over the main beat, the main rhythm of your composition, and the accents and so on, and leave the drummer to add that high drive to the percussion. In this live example, I will show you how I use the drummer to add some little fills and details, basically to spice up the drum performance. So without it, it sounds like this. I actually recorded manually the kick drum, the snare drum, and some hi-hats, and it sounds like this. Alright, so let's bring up the drummer track here, and as you can see, I simply created short regions, in this case only a quarter note long and half a bar here, and 2 other regions a quarter note long too. And I went into the drummer, created these regions, shortened them, and then I applied only the toms on this Logan Retro Rock kit and drummer. And then I choose some fills on the fills knob, because I basically want to add little variation and spices to the drum performance that I can then copy and paste into the addictive drums here below. So they simply sound like this. All toms, as you can hear, and in the context of the track. And by the way, a common thing to do in this case is also to add a crash cymbal right after a fill like this, so I could do that in this track here, but for this example let's skip that, and I just want to focus on the drummer regions here. So the first one, I applied some fill, no swing here, and this tom preset, and slightly soft and simple. More complex here in the turn of the 4 bar here into the bar 38 here. As you can see, if I go here, slightly more complex, more hits here, higher on the fills factor, and some swing here as well. Now for this third region, I wanted to add even more spice to the drum performance, so I brought the swing knob to maximum, set it on 8 notes, and that will make it swing for sure. And for the final region, I brought it softer and simpler, because this is the ending of this particular performance. And now I will give you a couple of power tips on using the drummer in Logic Pro X. Power tip 1. Follow the groove. When using the drummer in Logic Pro X, it can sometimes be a bit difficult to get it to behave in a way that suits the timing of other rhythmic parts inside your composition. This is why I personally love the feature in the drummer simply called Follow. When checking this checkbox, you can choose which track inside your project the drummer will be influenced by when creating its performance. However, it is not always working as you expect, so you might want to double check what you end up with. Also, if you change the track it follows, you need to refresh the drummer region to make it update its performance accordingly. Now, as with almost anything inside the drummer track, this feature is also region-based. So you can, for example, have one drummer region be influenced by your bass track, and the next region by perhaps an ostinato strings track inside your composition. Power tip 2. Percussion part creator. One of my personal favorite ways of using the drummer in Logic Pro X is not to create complete drum performances, but to instead use it as a percussion part creator. For example, I can use the drummer for adding fills to my epic cinematic toms, or spicing up the high end with stick hits on my taikos by using the hi-hat performance from the drummer track, and so on. Basically, I first choose the drum part or parts from the drum kit to create the percussion performance from. Then I choose the drummer, the style, shape the performance, and then I drag and drop the created region to the track I want to use it on. Finally, I polish the MIDI inside the piano roll on the new track. Power tip 3. Fills and transition creator. Transitions and fills are so important in music for adding that spark of change and anticipation for something new that you will introduce in the next section of your track. That is why I often use a 1-bar drummer region to help me get a starting point for a fill or transition. that I can then option drag to one or several percussion tracks in my composition. Then I can go into each of these copied regions and make some customizations to fit my specific needs for each track. But the point is that I get a great starting point, quick and easy, which cuts down the time dramatically, and I love features that make my composition workflow more efficient. Congratulations! You have now learned and improved your knowledge and skills on using the drummer in Logic Pro X. Now it is time for your project, which I strongly recommend you to do because learning by doing is the most powerful way to become an expert or even master in any field. 1. Create a new project in Logic Pro X with 3 tracks: bass, chords, and melody. 2. Record a 16-bar section with these 3 tracks. And 3. Add a drummer track and use the knowledge you gained to practice creating and shaping regions and performances. Experiment, practice, and have fun improving your skills in using the drummer track in Logic Pro X for your music productions. My name is Mike, and I wish you great success on your journey in music. Check out my complete video series on Logic Pro X tutorials and tips here on my channel. Learn and master Logic Pro X to boost your music composition and production workflow.